much of our content, and that is why we always give you the pieces, then it's up to you to research. And one of those pieces today may be a bit harder to research, but this tells the story of not just the Jedi that come from Egypt, that are based on not just the Jedi pillar, but when you put all three of them together, kind of symbolism that some people have taken too literal. Burning of Osiris, just like Star Wars people take it too literal, even when Lucas himself says it's not about the characters.
You know, the characters and the plot were not as important as the metaphor and the symbolism. And what I wanted to do was go back to some of the older propaganda, which was consistent through all of the societies, which is mythology, but to say, what did they all believe? Because they were all, this propaganda was created independently.
Not about a plot. It's not even about spaceships. What it represents, what the themes it represents, the history that it represents.
Psychological motifs that are in mythology, and if they're still accurate today, because the great thing about mythology is an oral medium up until they learned how to write.
There's a cycle, just like the cycle, the 26,000 year cycle, the zodiac, the ages that we come into, such as coming into the age of Aquarius, from the age of Pisces.
It's about good and evil, but heroes, what makes a hero? Yeah. What's friendship? What's the idea of sacrificing yourself for something larger? Yeah. They're all really basic things. They say, well, we don't have to make a movie about that. It's very obvious, but it's actually not. So a lot of the films, when I was doing Star Wars, right after Star Wars, they didn't have room for spectacular. They only had room for, you know, street movies. So, which is what I've been doing before that. And so doing something that was sort of, you know, an epic, a historical piece, science fiction, fantasy, any of those things, you just couldn't do it because they cost too much money. And because in the world we live in the system we've created for ourselves in terms of, it's a big industry, you cannot lose money. So the point is that you have to, you're forced to make a particular kind of movie. Technically, you couldn't accomplish it. The force was at work there.
To create. Whoever created George Lucas gave him those two skills.
Yes, and they're the opposites. But inspired by, but of course inspired by Westerns, and you know, people go through and say these are all the inspirations that were influenced Star Wars, and they are. Just like whether you're a writer, but you know, it works everywhere except it seems in politics, because they are doomed to repeat themselves every few years because they do not listen to history.
Where did the idea of force come from?
The whole thing in Star Wars was to take, ideas, psychological ideas, from social issues, political issues, spiritual issues, and condense them down into an easy to tell story of those stories. The Force basically came from, you know, distilling all of the religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, go all around the world, all through time, finding the similarities, and then creating an easy to deal with metaphor for what religion is. And the point is that in the very beginning, when you have people worshiping rocks and deer, they called it life force. They called it the Force. Right. That's what it was. And so where did the name come from? It came from basically life force of what the more primitive religions believed in. And then you go through all the other religions and they have the same thing. You know, it's all the same, you know, whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, believe in religion, don't believe in religion. The issue is that you either don't believe there's anything else out there, which is a little, I think would be hard to live with at the same time, I mean, I believe something's out there. I just don't know what it is. I have no idea, or what I dare to guess. But I do know that religions aren't based on it.